Good morning, it's day 3 of our Pelican Tote Sew Along, and today we're doing the exterior. So I have my exterior pocket panel, and I have double stick tape on both ends of the right side. And I have my top panel and my bottom panel, both with double stick tape in the centers where they meet. And I've cut and singed the rest of my number 5 zipper to the same length as my panel. And again, we don't need to put our zipper pull on yet. It'll just be in the way. If you're using a ready-made zipper, don't cut it yet. Just put it on here and move it to one end or the other to get your zipper pull out of the way for you, and to make sure that none of the metal pieces are going to be in line with your seam lines. The construction for the exterior is the same for both the basic and the fancy, so I'm only going to be going through this one time, and you'll do the same thing if you're making one or the other or both. We're going to start out with our zipper foot on today, so if you still have it on from yesterday, you're great. I'm using my number 80 universal needle, and I've got my stitch length to my construction stitch of a number 2. We're going to start out with our bottom front panel. I'm going to remove this piece of tape, or just the paper from the tape. And then I'm going to place my zipper on with the teeth facing down, and I'm just going to line up the top edge. It's all on nice and straight. Then I'm going to take my exterior pocket panel. I'm going to remove the paper from one end and I'm going to place it face down, matching the raw edge and the top edge of the zipper tape. So again, I've made a sandwich. My bottom panel is face up, my zipper teeth are face down, and my pocket panel is face down. And I'm just going to stitch across here with my construction stitch. And now I'm going to flip this around so that my wrong sides meet each other, and then my zipper tape is going to pop up. So you should be seeing the front of your panel and the teeth of your zipper. And you can take that and press that if you need to. To save time, I'm not going to press. I'll just finger press. And then you're going to top stitch that. Changing back to my 3.5. Alright, so your zipper teeth are facing up and your raw edge of your zipper is on the top. You should see the front of your panel. When you lift that, you should see the interface side of your pocket panel. So you're going to take this bottom piece and you're going to pull it up. so the right sides are touching. You're just going to lay that down, remove your paper from your tape. You can also use clips for these steps if you don't have or don't want to use tape. Now you're going to line up the edge of your zipper to the top edge of that tape. So see how you've made yourself a pocket here? You're going to take your top panel and remove the paper. And you're going to turn that towards you. So if you have a directional print like I do, make sure you start, they're both facing up, and then I'm going to turn this over, down towards me. And then make my sandwich again. And then the same thing as before, stitch with my construction stitch, but then this time I'm only flipping up one piece to top stitch. So flip that up, and again, if you need to press that, go ahead. I find with these pieces that are interfaced, finger pressing is usually okay. Change back to my top stitch. Alright, and now you have a front panel, your top panel, your bottom panel, your zipper in between them, and then your open pocket. Now before we go any further, we need to put our zipper on. We're going to do that the exact same way as we did the zipper closure if you did that with me. You're going to check which tooth is on top. On this one, my right tooth is on top. I'm also going starting on my right side because when I close my zipper, I want my pole to be on my left. So I'm on my right side, my right tooth is on top. I'm just going to open a few teeth to be able to work with my V side of my zipper facing down, so when I pull it across the front, it's closing the zipper. Put my right side in first. It looks like I may have melted my tooth a little bit with my lighter. And then I'm going to put in my left side. I may have to go and trim that tooth out. I think I melted it. We'll try one more time. There it goes. Right side in, left side in. My tape looks about even. I'll just use my thumbs to hold it, and then I'm going to use my finger to push it. Making sure when they come through that I have one right tooth on top of one left tooth and I don't have two right teeth or there's any skipping or my left is on top. If it comes out where your left is on top, all of these zips will end up being uneven and you want them to stay straight. So your tooth that was on top to begin with should be on top when you put this on. Now instead of bringing this all the way closed, I'm going to leave it in the center. That way I have a closed end here and a closed end here to work with, and my zip is in the center and not bothering me. Now we're going to change to our walking foot, and we're going to stitch across the zip to close it and stitch down the side to base that pocket closed and base it to the front so that you end up with one panel. So you'll just stitch down on both sides. If you're not using a walking foot, you can change to your Teflon foot right now because we'll be adding the vinyl next. Or you can put on your regular foot if you're more comfortable, or you can just try and use your zipper foot. We're just doing a couple basting stitches. But I'm going to go ahead and switch. I'm going to leave it at my 3.5 since we're basting. I'm going to make sure my pocket is nice and flat here. I'll just clip it down. We'll start right above the teeth. All right, now you have a completed front panel. All of that is basted closed, and this is one panel. And then you have your back panel, which is already whole, and they should be close to the same length. So you have two pairs of vinyl, two mirrored pairs. So you're going to take the two that make a complete bottom. You're going to match those up on either side of your panel. If you used a number 5 zip on the front instead of a number 3, you might see that you're maybe a 1/4 inch off or so, depending on how much seam allowance you gave on your zipper. If that's the case, just match your bottoms and you can trim your top. We're going to sew this on with a 1/2 inch seam allowance and a construction stitch. I'm using a stitch of 2 for my construction stitch. If you're finding that your foot is pulling or your stitches are skipping, you might try a 2.5, maybe even a 3. If you do use a 3, I would recommend 2 rows of stitching so that when you turn this out, your stitches aren't pulling because they're so long. So we're at our construction stitch of 2. And we're going to give a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You're going to fold that open with your seam allowance facing your side. You don't want to turn the seam allowance over. The only thing you want to turn is your vinyl panel, and you're going to top stitch on that vinyl. If you really feel like you need to press to get this down and even, make sure you use a pressing cloth, or even better, press it with the vinyl face down and a pressing cloth on top, and then you're just going to press on your seam allowance. So I'll just do that here at the table. So that's open, and you're just going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch along that row. Make sure you move to your top stitch. And you should be using your Microtex or your heavy duty needle here. My thread is black, so you can't see that top stitch very well. So you're going to do the same thing for the other side, and then you're going to do the same thing for the back panel. Alright, so you should have your 2 panels completed, your back panel and your front panel. Again, this is both for the basic and the fancy version the same. You can go ahead and move your zipper over now if you'd like to, into its all the way closed position. Right, if you're using the Decoville to provide structure to your bag, you're just going to fuse that on to both of your exterior pieces. And then you should have about 1/2 inch all the way around. If you're using the foam, you're going to lay your foam down. You're going to put your exterior piece in the center. And I'm going to pin a couple places on my woven. I can't pin my vinyl. And this will just keep me straight as I'm going around. And we're going to baste all the way around at 3/8 of an inch. So you can use a longer stitch for your basting. Alright, so you've got your foam basted around. We're going to flip it over. And you can use regular scissors, or you might find that you like a duckbill with this flat blade and these curved. I like these. They're kind of pointy, but I like the bend in them and I like the shape, and it's a good shape to cut this. what you're going to do is you're going to pull this seam allowance up and you'll be able to see your stitch all the way around. And you're going to cut along that seam right on top of the stitch. Try not to catch any of the stitches. It's not the end of the world if you do, but you want to cut right on top of that stitch. What you don't want to do is catch your fabric at all. So now when you have that cut out, you should have 3/8 of an inch of fabric up here, so that when we stitch together at our 1/2 inch, you're only going to have 1/8 of an inch of this foam in your seam allowance, and you have all of this extra seam allowance that is not going to be bulky. So you want to finish that trim all the way around, and then you want to do the same thing to your other exterior piece. Alright, we should be here with either our foam basted on and the seam allowance is cut out, or with your Decoville adhered on, and you should have a 1/2 inch seam allowance around there. Now is the time if you need to trim your top vinyl pieces to match your woven piece, go ahead and do that. If you do trim, match it up to your back piece and trim your back piece the same. So either version, foam or Decoville, we're going to start with our piece face down, and you're going to need your dart tracing template. We're just going to match up our side and our bottom, and you're going to trace that dart. I'm using a Sharpie marker so you can see, and then you'll flip it, line up the bottom, line up the side, and trace that dart. Alright, so you have a dart in each rounded corner. So now you're going to fold those until your two bottom marks match right across there, and clip it there. Then you're going to go to your point and pinch your point together. Then that'll give you that perfect ridge. So same thing. Fold until your two bottom lines meet and clip. And then pinch your ridge together at your point and clip. Right. Now you're just going to sew down the line, back stitching at top and bottom. Since I have the foam on here and it's on a vinyl corner, I lengthened to a 2.5 for my construction instead of just a 2. Alright, you have your two darts basted, and you're just going to trim those right off. Alright, for the basic version only, this is when I like to attach my straps before anything else is attached and this piece is flat and I can reach everything. So you're going to take one strap for your front, and you're going to find which side you like better, which top stitching side you like better. The pretty side, you're going to put face down next to you. So your strap is long, the pretty top stitching is face down to your bag, and you're just going to curve it. So you make sure you don't want to twist this over because your strap will be twisted. So keep it straight and just curve the two ends to each other and let this center piece do whatever it needs to do. You're going to match those right next to your vinyl on top of your cotton woven. And again, this is the basic version, only the fancy version, the straps are attached at the end. So you get those attached on your woven right next to your vinyl pieces, and you're just going to baste across the ends, and you can use the basting line from your phone. Alright, you should have a front with your zipper and your corners darted. Then you should have a back with the plain back, your corners darted, and if you're making the basic version, your straps are basted on. We're going to put these right sides together. You're going to match all along the curved edge, and you're going to sew with a construction stitch at 1/2 inch seam allowance. When I come to those darts, I like to fold one way and one the other way, and that is called a nesting seam. You want to watch your bottoms and match up your vinyl edges. Or if you're not using vinyl, it'll be your seam between your side panels and your front and back panels. So again, at that dart, we're going to nest the seams. If your pinking shears are strong enough, you can pink this curve. I know that mine are not. It's probably not my shears. It's probably more the arthritis in my wrist, but I can't squeeze them tight enough to get through this vinyl. So I'm just going to use my fabric shears, and I'm going to cut some little triangles out around both of my curves. And I'm going to start just past the seam at the bottom, and then I'm going to come up just until right before it starts to turn straight. And I'm just going to cut little triangles. So I'm going to go in at an angle and then change my angle. I'm not going all the way to my 1/2 inch seam. I'm going in to right before my foam seam. And it's okay to trim in the dart because you're just going to be taking extra bulk out. If you can hear my husband, I'm sorry, he works from home. He's downstairs, but I swear he's the loudest man I know. So there we have our notches trimmed, and we're just going to do that to the other curve. Now I'm going to take a little chunk of that seam where the darts are. Alright, so you've got your two curves notched, 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now we're going to turn it right side out and check that we like everything. Trim up some of these threads here. I just threw all the scraps on the floor because usually there's a trash can next to me and it's missing. Just manipulate your bag. It's okay to squish everything. Just try not to pull on any of your seams. You don't want them to pop. So we get to this corner and we're just going to push out with our fingers. And you should end up with a pretty cross here. And hopefully your seams will be lined up here as well. And while you're pushing, you want to check for your stitches, especially in your vinyl areas. If you push out and you see too much of a stitch, your stitch length was too long. And that's okay because you might have needed it to be that long to get your foot to go across. That's perfectly fine. Just push your bag back wrong side out, and right next to it, in towards the seam allowance, not toward the bag, do another stitch, even if it has to be the same length. That way when you push this out, the stress is going to be on that inside stitch in your seam allowance, and the stitch that you're going to see here isn't going to be pulled as much. And that'll help reinforce it so you know that your stitches are nice. So again, just push out your corners, push out your sides, check your side seams, make sure everything's like you like it. Again, your straps will only be attached if you are using, or if you're sewing the basic version. And you should have what almost looks like a finished bag. I forgot we need to put our handmade tag on during this step before we go any further. So all we're going to do, if yours is inside a channel here, I'm going to undo and take those pieces apart. All right. So your prongs are going to go through your 2 end slots on each end. So this is the template that we want to use to line up where we want them, and then we're going to mark those 2 slots and cut them, just like we did for the magnet. So we're just going to center this on our top panel here. I'm looking for a smaller ruler. Alright, so we have 8 inches. So our center is going to be 4. And then I like to go about 1 inch up from the top stitching on that zipper. So I'm just going to mark that 4. A tiny dot. I'm going to center my template. And I'm hiding the dot with this top edge. So the dot that I made is right on this top edge. It's not in the center. This is totally personal preference, and you can do it however you like. So we're going to mark those 2 on each end. So you have a couple of number 11s there. With our sharp snips, we're going to fold this and we're going to snip those 4s and make slits. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, if you didn't put foam or Decoville in the inside and you just have cotton woven right here with the interfacing, you're going to want to cut a small piece of probably Decoville or maybe like 3 layers of woven interfacing and adhere that in this section to give it some stability and something to hold on to so it doesn't tear out. But if you have the foam or the Decoville, then you're perfectly fine. So you're just going to insert those prongs. You want to straighten them as much as you can and insert them into those 4 slits that we made. And yes, I did notice that my hardware doesn't match my zipper because I brought the wrong zipper. This is supposed to be a gunmetal zipper, but luckily I have extra rainbow zippers, so on my fancy version I can fix that. So you got your prongs inserted. Flip it so you're at the inside. You're going to take your template and you're going to put them on those prongs. So you want to make sure that your prongs are going into the 2 that you marked. So the 2 on each end. Once you get that pushed down as firmly as you can, then you're just going to spread those prongs out. Just like we did for the magnet. Right. Now if you don't want this to rub on the back side of your interior, you can put a piece of painter's tape, or you can try very, very carefully to fuse a piece of interfacing on here. You might melt your foam if you do that. If you're using the Decoville, that's fine. You can go ahead and do that. But I would suggest just putting a piece of painter's tape on here, or even a piece of duct tape if you don't mind. That'll just keep that from rubbing on your interior. So now you've got your little label above your zipper. Hopefully yours match. And now we're finished for today. See you tomorrow.